So now, I mean, not that I really have to explain it to you, but when God said that to Miriam, what was he alluding to, or what was his point? You have several prophets. Excuse how my fists look because, boxing. I hit pretty hard. You have several prophets. Moses, Elisha, Elijah, Yeshua, Isaiah, Ezekiel, right? Daniel. Daniel tells me something. I question him. Okay. Isaiah tells me something. I question him. Moses tells me something. I question him. God strikes me with leprosy because I question Moses, right? And then he explains to me why he did that for questioning Moses. He's telling me, listen, you can question these guys because they can make mistakes. Because even the things I've revealed to them, they don't even fully understand what I've revealed. Daniel didn't understand everything he wrote. Isaiah didn't understand everything he wrote, but they wrote it. A prophet's job is not to understand what he's writing. His job is just to write down what God told him to write. Moses, however, does not make any mistakes. So if he tells you to do something and you say no, you're telling God no. If Isaiah tells you to do something and you say no, well, I can say no to Isaiah because God hasn't... Isaiah is fallible. God hasn't spoken to him mouth to mouth, face to face, and not by riddles. God has spoken to Isaiah by riddles. You understand? There's a difference. Okay. By definition, what is a false prophet? And you would see where I'm going to with this, concerning, again, the faithful and discreet slave class. So that you know it's not my words, but God's. The nation of Israel would ask Yahweh, how do we know if this prophet was sent by you or not? How do we know if this is a false prophet or a true prophet? And then Yahweh would send his prophets and tell them, when a man speaks in my name, when a man speaks specifically in my name and says, this is going to happen, truly, you don't know if he's a true prophet or a false prophet. So, time must pass. When that day or hour comes, and what that man said in my name does not come to pass, you know he has spoken presumptuously, and he has spoken falsely in my name. He's a false prophet. You must not fear him, and you must not listen to him. Okay. (1914). And I keep using 1914 because it's what we mostly are aware of. We don't know of the other 5 times, 4 times, 5 times that they falsely prophesied in the name of Yahweh. They just put that under the rug like it never happened. Because they know someone who studies the Bible will be like, wait, hold up. You guys are prophesying in the name of Yahweh. You're saying something's going to happen before it happens in God's name. You know how many people you will stumble when that day or hour comes and nothing happens? How many people will leave the truth because you have taken it upon yourself to speak in the name of Yahweh, a message that he has not put in your mouth to speak? So by definition, these people are false prophets. How great is that sin of falsely prophesying in the name of Yahweh? Well, you remember the prophet Samuel and Saul, when Saul was supposed to wait for Samuel to come before he offered up a burnt sacrifice to Yahweh, and Saul got impatient, grew impatient, and he went on and sacrificed something to Yahweh. And then when Samuel came, what did Samuel tell Saul? He said, does God take pleasure in burnt sacrifices as much as paying attention to his word and obeying him? Listen, to obey is better than to sacrifice. Before then, too, he said, To move ahead, or was it after that he said, to move ahead of God and to act presumptuously, to do something that God did not tell you to do, or to do opposite of what God told you to do. He said to be presumptuous in accordance with God is the same to God as using uncanny power and teraphim. What are these things? Witchcraft. It is the same sin as witchcraft to God, to move ahead of him. So to take it upon yourself and tell people that this is what's happening in God's name, this is what's going to happen in God's name, and God has not sent you to do that, is the same thing to him as using witchcraft. That is why, for these reasons and a couple others, telling me to shave my God-given beard, calling God's name Jehovah when it should be Yahweh, calling his son's name Jesus, which means Hail Zeus, when it should be Yeshua, falsely prophesying in the name of God in our history books at least 6 or 7 times, at least. Charles Taze Russell being part of the Freemasons and using the study of pyramids in Giza to derive the date of 1914. Us saying that Yeshua is king right now, that he started being king as starting from 1914, even though the Bible says that Yeshua says that generation shall not pass unless all these things happen. And what is a generation according to the Bible, not according to faithful and discreet slave class? Come on. According to the Bible, a generation is 40 years. Job lived to 3 more generations after his trial, which was a period of 40 years each. Moses lived 3 generations. The first generation when he was 40 years old, which he was the only man of his age, because remember, the firstborn sons were killed during Moses' time. He was saved by the river when his mother put him in the river. He was the only one around that age. Yeshua too was the only one around his age because there was a mass murder of firstborns. Remember that in Bethlehem. And they had to go to Egypt, right? Moses, when he was 40, a generation years old, God sent him to Midian. He grew to be 80 years old. That's another 40 years. That's another generation. To be a shepherd, to know how to be patient with the nation of Israel. Then when he went to Israel, when he went to Egypt to free them, he was with them for another generation. Okay, God told them while they were in the wilderness that generation will die off and the next generation will enter into the promised land. How many years did they wander the wilderness? 40 years, a generation. Okay, most kings of Israel ruled for about a generation. David, I think he ruled for, was it 30 or 40 years? He became king when he was 30, ruled until he was 70. He died when he was around 70. He ruled for about 40 years. Solomon ruled for about 40 years. God told Solomon, if you obeyed me, I would extend your years and you would reign more than 40 years. But he disobeyed during the end of his years because of his many wives, which wasn't really a sin, but they moved his heart away from God, so it became a sin. He ruled for about 40 years. 40 years is a generation. Yeshua said, this generation shall not pass until all these things happen. But now you're letting man tell you that no, 40 years is not what a generation is. You know, we've changed the meaning. Generation doesn't mean that. Why are they doing that? Because they're trying to cover up their lies. Okay. And what I'm saying is, if falsely prophesying and speaking presumptuously in the name of God and saying things you're not 100% sure of in God's name would make me as guilty to him as using witchcraft and uncanny power, demonism, then I might as well just keep my mouth shut and wait. It's better to be safe than sorry. That's what I'm saying. Which is why I don't preach that Yeshua was king since 1914. Because then the generation doesn't add up. The fact that they were wrong and they said originally that it was the end of the world, not that Christ would become king in 1914, but they're changing up their words now. That's another thing. This is what men do when they become fallible and proven to be fallible or liars. Why else? Simple. They said, remember, Yeshua's disciples came to him and they were showing him about how beautiful the temple was in Jerusalem. I'm going to speed it up a little bit. How beautiful the temple was in Jerusalem. how beautiful the temple was in Jerusalem. And then Yeshua said, now the stone will be left upon the stone, right? And and he says, when will these things happen, right? And that it says, it will begin when the trampling of the nations are upon Jerusalem, right? But the organization uses the trampling of the nation as something that happened before Christ came. But as Christ is speaking with his disciples, read that passage. Is he talking about a future time, or is he talking about a time that has already passed? It's so obvious he's talking about a future time. Not a stone will be left upon a stone. The nations will trample upon Jerusalem. The Gentiles will trample upon Jerusalem. This is a future time. So to say that it started in 607 BCE, so that you can derive at 1914, is just another way to cover up the lie. It's just another way to cover up the lie. I mean, I could go on and on, but it's going to be too long of a video. Most people nowadays don't have a very short, span of listening to people talk. So, listen, I'll just leave that at that. Every man is fallible. Even Peter was fallible. He thought he could not preach to the Gentiles when he could. He was calling things unclean when God has already declared it clean. He had a heated dispute with Paul. Something that if somebody saw would be like, these guys aren't Christians. Okay, the point is they're fallible men. They have room for error. And to say that you're going to follow them without questioning them, what? Out of respect and reverence for them and no respect for God, when God actually says you must question every information that someone brings to you. And even Paul said that even if you get a letter that seems to be from us, you have to question, because so many false prophets have gone out into the world. And by definition, the slave class are false prophets. Well, not them, but the organization started off with false prophecies. Like I said, at least 7 times. What else was I going to say? So I'm like the Berean. Is it the Bereans who were more noble-minded than those in Thessalonica? That when they received the word, they questioned everything that they received to see whether it was from man or really from God. So I'm a Berean. Am I sinning by being more noble-minded? Or is God actually pleased with me that I'm seeking truth and not putting man over him? First of all, if you're calling his son Jesus and his name Jehovah, you're already displeasing him. And remember, the Bible says that they will receive a few strokes. The faithful and discreet slave class, yes, they will receive a few strokes. So they are sinning. And right now, they are sleeping. You want to know how I know? Was it the 10 virgins or the 7 virgins? Was it the 10 virgins? That the half were discreet and the other half were foolish. And the ones that were discreet had oil in their lamps, right? And it said they were more discreet, right? But they all, both the foolish and the discreet, nodded and went to sleep. They nodded and went to sleep. And when the bridegroom came, they woke up and they went with the bridegroom. They nodded and went to sleep. Keep on the watch. Do not fall asleep. Spiritual sleepiness means what? To fall spiritually asleep means that you are not keeping in tune with God's time. You are doing something either ahead of God or you are not keeping up with God. The slave class are right now, they are sleeping. And they wrote about that topic. Surprisingly, I think it was 3 months after I mentioned it to a friend, they mentioned it in the convention. And they said that it does not really mean that they are asleep spiritually, but it means something else. Okay.